Hello everybody. How are you doing? I hope you're well wherever you are in the world, that your health is in good order, and if it isn't, that you actually have some things that you can do so that you're at least feeling a little bit more comfortable rather than in a very painful, difficult position. Yeah, it's not nice when you're not well. And if there's nothing that can be done, hopefully we can give you some light entertainment. Well, that's the intention. So let's see how we go. Okay. What was I going to say? I was actually going to say something additional to you. Yeah, some of you might have seen the clock coming up and then going away several times on the starting screen. Yeah, no idea. I have no idea why that's been happening. Well, I know why it's kind of happening. I was trying to get it to show for a different time period to what I usually do, but apparently it doesn't want to. I don't know. It's confusing, really. Very confusing, or rather confusing. Yeah. So, let's see. What else is there going on? I've had lovely photos of food being posted in the Discord server. Thank you. Thank you for posting those over there. That was really inspiring. Sorry, I'm doing a little bit of stapling. I've got a little list of not instructions, commands that I need to read through and check up and see if there's anything I need to do that is similar. So I've been printing those off, among other things, and I've had a really awkward admin day today. So doing things like creating a list of little cards that have to be done for displaying our products that we make. I've got a system for it, which is all very straightforward now that I've figured it out, but it requires a lot of cutting and pasting and then a little bit of editing and stuff like that. But then when I go to print them, because they have to be printed onto lightweight card and they have to be printed on both sides so that one side has information for the customers and the other side has information for the person who's going to be reselling the products. Yeah, I don't like wasting things. So when you get one card on its own on an A4 sheet or a letter size sheet of paper, and normally you fit 8, I feel like it's a bit of a waste. So I was reluctantly going ahead with printing that one anyway. And then I realized that I had printed that one before it had been fully edited, so it had some of the text cut off the bottom. And so I had to reprint it after having already cut the piece of cardboard. So I thought, well, that's easy. We'll just turn it into an A5 sheet that it's printing on, which is half of an A4. Which means changing the layout on the page that it's printing on. That should make sense, except that it's a manual feed, so that means you've got to put it into the printer the right way and all this sort of stuff. And then it didn't change the way it was sitting on the page anyway, and it just didn't make sense, any of it. And so I ended up wasting 3 pieces of cardboard instead of just going ahead and printing it on a new bit of cardboard in the first place. Frustrating. Because I'd got it worked out in my head and it wasn't working the way it was meant to work out in my head. That sort of stuff. That sort of frustration. But I'm over that now. I am, honestly. I think I am. I try to be over it. Anyway, so what have we got today? We've got going on, I've got my commands here, which somebody else's commands for me to have a look at to revise later on to see if I want to use anything like that on my own channel. I have my own list of commands ready to be able to paste them in like this one here so that you know who I am and what I'm doing. It just says for me I type in hi and then it gives you that little bit of text there, and I don't have it on my overlay for you anymore just because you can't interact with the one on the overlay, you can only see it. But what I have now is, if you're watching this on Twitch, you can see that in the chat panel. And if you were watching it on a mobile device, you wouldn't have been able to read it anyway because it was so small on the overlay. What else? I've got my camera working. I have my microphone working. Yay, we're winning. I missed out on somebody else's stream earlier on today, which I was looking forward to, and I was even, probably going to have to work as a moderator on it, but yeah, admin. It's just one of those things. I do like being my own boss and being at home. Well, kind of my own boss. My husband's, I suppose, my boss in some ways, because what I do is because of what he does, and so therefore it has to fit in with what's needed there. But he doesn't put too much time pressure on me, so that's good. We get there. We get there. Not too many arguments about things where I've got one opinion and he's got another, which is good. It's part of, as you develop a relationship, deciding what's important and what's not. It's a good life skill, actually, for lots of situations. I'm looking around. I've had my daughter here for a couple of days, which has been wonderful. She's an adult. She lives in another city in another part of the country, so we don't often get to see her. And that's probably also thrown my sense of timing on things, just because, an interruption to your daily routines and all that sort of stuff. I haven't had a headache. That's been fantastic. I do have a tendency to get headaches when we have big changes in the weather, which we have had recently. But somebody else in the family who doesn't normally get them did get a headache instead. Who knows? I don't know. No, I don't think it's COVID, because that's the only symptom they've got is a headache. I do have a jigsaw puzzle if anyone wants it. Just type in !jigsaw or !puzzle, or any of the nickname versions of that, which I've told you about before, and that will, if you do want to, let me know beforehand if you do want to, because then I can make it so it's visible so that you can do something to join it. If you don't want to join it, I won't bother putting it up on the screen. Anyway, so that sort of thing. Sorry, I'm taking my socks off. I'm now getting too hot. And I have no idea what book we're going to read next. I still haven't figured that out. I suppose I could look at the library on my iPad mini. Maybe Dr. Dolittle. How about that? Have you read any Dr. Dolittle, or have you only watched the TV series, or watched the movie, or one of the movies, or whatever? I've never, I don't think I've ever properly read them. And some of them actually are in public domain, because they're to do with when they were published rather than when the author died, for that particular set of public domain rules. So maybe we could read Dr. Dolittle after we've read this book. We've still got, I think, 2 chapters to go. And I'm trying to work out why the book, my list of books, is not showing in the order in which it usually does. It usually shows me books in the sequence of when I last read them. And it's not, and I don't know why. That's really odd. I'm sure there's a reason. No idea. Go back to that list and then I can find it again. I know it's here. We do have another book to read after this one in this series. I think that one's called Harding's Luck. I'm not sure. But we won't be reading it straight away. Anyway, so what about I introduce myself to those of you who are new here or who haven't been for a while, and then we can get on with actually reading the book. That's a good idea, I think. Yeah. Okay, so hi, I'm Jev. I read old books, old children's books specifically. Now, I grew up reading books such as this. This is 125 years old. It was a book that was given to my grandmother's brother, one of her brothers. And it's got rather intriguing illustrations, not the style of what you and I are used to. Let's see if I can find you one. This is probably the one I usually turn to because it's easy to find. As you can see from the style of their clothing, that is a long time ago. That's during the Victorian era. I'm glad we didn't have to wear clothes like that. Especially in summer. Oh, that would have been so hot. So the illustrations are made originally, what they were printed from, is they were scratched onto the printing surface, such as a sheet of metal or stone or wood, and then ink was rubbed across the surface. The excess ink was taken off. Whoopsie, my ebook is about to go flat, and I need to plug it in. My ebook, my iPad mini. There you go, it is now plugged in and it should be charging. Yes, it is. I might just tell it to go to sleep for a minute while I'm talking, and then it gets a chance to charge. But so the ink was rubbed across the surface of the printing plate, then they would wipe off the excess ink, so you just had the ink sitting in the scratches that they had made, and then they would put the printing plate and a piece of paper into the press that would squeeze them hard together, and that would make the ink stick to the paper and get pulled out of those lines, and then that paper is what's used in the book. And then that's one form of printing illustrations. And it's also old enough that I can actually feel, it's a bit hard to see it, I can feel the texture of the dips in the page from where the letters were pressed into the page to leave their marks on the page with their ink. So yeah, sorry, I'm just putting it behind my magic curtain here. My green screen. It's just made out of a piece of felt, very bright green felt. So that's the sort of book that I grew up reading. Not necessarily as old as that. Some of them were newer than that. Some of them were that age, maybe even older. But they were books that were hand-me-downs from my parents and my grandparents. So I was actually reading their books, those real old books. That was very common for me, but also picking up books from the library to read, especially the school library, because they had a decent-sized children's section, unlike the adults' library in town, which had a tiny little kids section. I wasn't interested in books about how to fix car engines just for the fun of reading it, which is the sort of thing that they seem to have for adults. So, yeah, the school library was great because all of it was books that were for children, whether they were fiction or non-fiction, but it was written in such a way that was a lot more interesting for a young mind. But also we would be given books as gifts for Christmas and birthdays and things like that. And they were precious to us because you don't just go down the road to the shop and buy yourself a book because they're expensive. We feel like books are expensive now, but relative to the cost of living, they're not that expensive compared with what they used to be. But because of that, the family had a tendency to keep books. Now, I have boxes of books downstairs in storage, and the one storage space we have in the house that is not the back of my office, basically. And eventually I will actually get to having the office behind me sorted, and then I will have a completely different setup where I don't need a green screen. I'll have a reading corner and all that sort of stuff, and bookshelves, and we can have story time like we're at the library or somewhere like that. And I will actually be putting the books from my boxes onto the shelves, and I will be reading from them. But in the meantime, I read from an old first generation iPad mini, which is also hand-me-down, because it's there, I use it, but I also like the fact that you can keep some old technology in use rather than having it go to waste, especially something that's as iconic as an iPad mini. So yeah, like I say, it's a first generation one, which means that it's rather old. I might just leave that sleeping for a little bit longer to get a little bit more power into it, because it was giving me a warning before that it was going to actually turn off. It was that flat. Right, so that's the sort of things I read, and the books that I read are all public domain books unless I have express permission from the publisher or the author to read it to you. I read public domain books because I believe that people should be paid for their work, the work that they have done in creating something, and copyright laws are a way of protecting that. So there is a particular series of books that I grew up reading. I first discovered them at the school library when I was at secondary school, and absolutely loved them. They were already out of time. They were old books by the time I read them. They were written before the Second World War, I'm guessing it was after the First World War. I can't remember the specific dates on it, but I happen to have over the years collected all of the books in this particular series. Most of them are the old versions that I really enjoyed, the old hardback copies printed by the publishers Jonathan Cape, which I don't think exists anymore. And then I filled in the gaps with the newer paperback versions of the books with the same illustrations inside, but they're not as big, they don't have the same feel to them. But I couldn't get them all as hardbacks, and they have become more and more collectible, so they're very expensive and harder to find now. Anyway, I do have them, and I was really hoping to be able to read them to you. I actually managed to make contact with the owners of, the trustees of the literary estate of the author, because the author is long dead. They are not yet in public domain. We have another 15 years to go for that, at least. And I did actually contact them to see if I could get permission to read them in this context here on Twitch, and then also transfer the videos over to YouTube afterwards so they're available. Because my thinking was, the style of the book and the age of the book for when they were written is so long ago that there is young people now are not going to read them. The only people who will read them are ones who remember reading them when they were growing up, often older than me. That's old. But the trustees actually were interested, but they had to also run it past the modern version of the publisher. So the books were originally published by Jonathan Cape. That company has been absorbed into another company which still owns the right for publication. And because technically putting a video up of me reading it on YouTube is a performance, you usually have to meet their requirements for performance usage. And usually that means that you have to pay fees for it and things like this, or they give permission and you don't have to pay fees. And I'm not in the place to pay fees for it, but also I'm not doing a high quality production. And the publishers have said no. So I'm really disappointed, but I'm going to honour it. Just because I don't think it's a good idea to set a bad example by saying, here, I really like these books, I'm going to steal the use of them, just because I want you people to hear them. So one day, if I'm still doing this in 15 or 20 years' time, we will probably read them, unless they approach me and say, oh, we've had another think about it. We would like you to actually read those. That would be nice, wouldn't it? I would definitely let you know if that happens. Anyway, so I'm Jev. I read old books. I've told you those bits. I have some tips for you. I give these same 3 tips to new viewers each time, just because I want you to be comfortable to be able to enjoy listening to the story. So they're just useful things to keep in mind. So my 3 tips for new visitors here, new participants, new members of the community, people just breezing on by, people who are listening to stories. My 3 tips are something to drink, something to snack on, and somewhere comfortable to sit or lie down. So I always have water handy, that's something to drink. But I also have, today's special drinks treat is iced coffee. Not homemade this time. And that's yummy. Water is brilliant to keep your brain and your body working. Make sure you get enough water every day. If you live in a hot climate, you have to get even more. But one of the difficulties when you go into cold weather like winter, which we're in now, when you first go into winter, it's common for people to stop drinking as much water as they used to drink when it was warmer weather, and your body still needs it, so keep drinking, and it helps your body to also throw out bugs and chuck out the trash. So yeah, drink lots of water. It's good for your brain and it's good for your body. So this is what I actually drink from, because the other one tips over too easily. Snacks. Do I have snacks today? Oh, let's have a look in the treat jar. That's my coffee QR code, which probably isn't scannable on my screen. Maybe I should put it up on the side of my overlay. So in my treat jar today, we have, what have we got? anticipation. We have licorice. That black stuff that some people absolutely loathe and some of us love it. So I'll just leave some out so I can snack on it when I need it. I hope you could hear me over the sound of the rattly bag. But I'm going to put the lid on and hopefully the ants won't be able to get into it. There you go. There's the QR code if you need to scan it. If you're watching this on your monitor, you can pick up your phone and scan it. Anyway, that's just for if you want to donate me that, well, give me a tip of the price of a cup of coffee or something like that, because coffee is lovely. If you like tea, that's okay. You can pretend that that's what you're giving it to me for. It's for tea. Sorry, I don't actually drink tea. It does horrible things to me. Anyway, right, so that's tips 1 and 2, drinks and snacks. Tip 3 is comfort. Get yourself, if you want to listen to a book for a long time, or if you want to read a book yourself for a long time, get yourself somewhere comfortable to sit or lie down. And so the reminder for me is these days, and it has been for quite some time, is this rather well-stuffed purple cushion with a lovely velvety texture on the pattern. But it's a great way to remind myself, get somewhere comfortable. I'm not actually sitting on the office chair that I used to sit on when I was reading, months ago, because this one here that I'm sitting on is more comfortable than the other one. It's just I have to stop it from rolling in the wrong direction, which it does sometimes try to do. It's one of those things. Anyway, so that's my 3 tips. I will be reading probably just the chapter, however long that takes, because this particular author has given us long chapters in this book. Some of our authors do lots of little chapters, some of them do just a few long chapters, and some of them do a mixture, and you never quite know until you get started. But this particular book has been rather intriguing. We have had one day when we read a couple of chapters, but that was a really long read. This chapter isn't quite as long. It's 29 pages. And then it's 37 pages. So I won't be reading the one that comes after it, because that's the last chapter anyway. So I'll be reading one chapter today and then one chapter next time. And that will be the end of the story. So maybe we will read Dr. Dolittle. Not next time, but the time after. Anyway, how about we get on with reading? If you want me to put up the jigsaw puzzle, then ask me in the chat. In the chat over there. I'm pointing to where it is on the on my Twitch page. Type into the chat that you would like to do the jigsaw puzzle. Don't use the command yet, because I need to actually get the jigsaw puzzle available on the side of the screen for you, below where it shows the image of the cover of the book. And if you are watching this on YouTube, because I do put these videos, just this bit here, the actual story window over on YouTube, and you're wondering what all this extra information is about, if it fits in for you to come across to Twitch at a time of day when I'm reading, then you'll actually get the full experience. And if you want the partial experience, you'll get to see the chat scrolling up the side and everything like that, plus the overlay and everything around it, but just not be able to interact with me at the time if you come over to Twitch. And if you're on YouTube, you will be able to find that link. It is somewhere on my profile page, I suppose. I do know it's there. I did put it there. Q, are you okay? It looks like you're in prison. Are you still stuck at home? That's no good. Oh, yes. Sorry, I forgot to turn chat on. I'll do that now. Yes, I just picked what it was you were telling me. There you go. Now you can chat. I knew there was something I'd forgotten. I kept on thinking, there's one more thing I've got to do. Not the talking bit, but one more actual preparation thing I've got to do. Thank you for doing that. That's great. Yes, you're free, both of you. Thank you, Q, for pointing that out. Sorry, I've got an itchy eye now. Anyone else who's wondering, I have some fairly strict security settings on my account just because I've been hate raided and a bunch of other things like that before, and I don't think it's a pleasant experience for anyone else who comes along and happens to actually be watching when that happens. So when I'm not broadcasting, I have it set so that my chat basically doesn't work unless you're a subscriber, and all you can use are emotes, which is what Q was doing. It just took me a while for the penny to drop. Yes, playing Pictionary, very much so. That was a good use of emoji. I'm glad you found one that you could use for that. So yeah, that's one of the things I do. The other thing I do is even when I am live, is I have a whole lot of rules in place that mean that it tends to minimize some of the icky stuff that people who are behaving badly can do. So there is a limit on how many characters you can write at a time when you're writing in chat. If you get timed out because you've written too much, then try cutting your message down to an old-fashioned text message or an old-fashioned Twitter message. The limit is actually 150 characters, and yes, emotes count, but I'm not sure how many characters they count for. But there are limits. So just break it down into smaller messages, like you're just taking a pause and saying a part of a sentence and then saying the next part and then saying the next part. And it means that others can interact a little bit more too. So don't write a great big long epistle and expect it to go through on the chat, because it won't. There's also some words that won't be allowed to go through and things like that. Because this is meant to be a comfortable, safe space for those who are not familiar with using the internet. And I don't want them scared off. I'd like them to discover that there are actually lots of fun places that you can visit on the internet without it being unsafe. So grannies and their grandkids can actually come and listen to the stories without being scared off, without being running from the room with their fingers in their ears because of the language and covering the eyes of the grandkids because of the language that's being typed up on the screen and things like that. So yeah, I don't mind if you like swearing in your own time and space and on your own channel. That is fine by me. I have no problem with language. We're just not going to use it on my page. So there you go. Right. And if you are watching on YouTube, do subscribe. Then YouTube will tell you when I put up a new video, and put a like on it. That'll help you to remember which ones you've actually watched and how far you got to. But it also lets me know what you're doing. You can leave comments over there, which is why they're not listed as for children specifically on YouTube, because you can't do commenting on children's videos, ones that are tagged for children. It's just one of those things, probably a safety thing. So how about we get on with reading? Does anybody actually want the jigsaw or not? Oh dear, we're getting there. And my tablet is getting there. It's now at 14% instead of 10, so that's better than it was. Actually, I wonder if I should use the other charge cable I've got. I've got two charge cables here, two new ones, which have multiple tips on them, which supposedly work better. Yes, I'm rattling a new packet with plastic in it, which supposedly work better than the one that I'm using now, and it may be a bit faster, may work faster. They're intriguing. One of them does. Can you see? No, you see that red there? That pinky red there? That actually has red lights scrolling through it. And I see it out of the corner of my eye sometimes, and especially where it goes down under my desk and it's not quite so bright. I see it out of the corner of my eye and I go, oh, that's right, that's there. But I've got this other one here, which is similar, but it's blue, but it has interchangeable tips, so I can use it for the iPad. And I have a feeling that the charge cable that's currently plugged into the iPad is actually a little bit lightweight, not very grunty, so it's going to take a very long time to charge. So let's see if we can swap them. I don't need that one at the moment. Ooh, and this one's a blue one with lights. I'll just try and do this without dropping the tip. Can you see the light shining through there? Yeah, to you it's just slightly pulsing, but in actual fact it's quite bright. Anyway, we'll see how we go. Yeah, just give us a shout if you do want the jigsaw puzzle, either of you. And it's charging, but I don't know how well it's charging. Anyway, right, that's going. And I can see that it's going because it's got a little bit of light showing. Let's get on with reading. We're up to chapter 12. This is The House of Arden by Edith Nesbit. It was written in 1907. No, it was published in 1907. So the time travelling the children in the book have been doing has been each time about 100 years further back, roughly. And this is chapter 12, Films and Clouds. The children had illegal licorice. No, mine is perfectly legal. I paid for it. And if you don't like it, I'll try not to rub it in that I'm eating it. Sorry about that. I do have a family member who can't stand it, so I'm just going to take a t-shirt off because it's rather warm now. That's what happens when I wave my arms around. Right. So the previous chapter, the children had got back from time travelling. They had taken some photos of what the castle looked like at the time, and they were going to develop them to see if they can use the design. Oh, yeah, the cord, illegal licorice, yeah, the colours all sparkling through it. They were going to, their idea was if they ever found the treasure, that they would be able to use the treasure to rebuild the castle that they have also inherited. But just before the end, we had this rather disconcerting statement made. Aunt Edith had been up into the city dealing with legal things to do with the inheritance. Aunt Edith put an arm around each of the children. This is the end of the last chapter, the previous chapter. Put an arm around each of the children as they sat on the broad window seat and swallowed something in her throat and sniffed, which usually means it's not good news. "Oh, it's not bad news, is it?" Elfrida cried. "Oh, darling auntie, don't be miserable, and don't say that they've found out that Arden isn't ours, or that Edred isn't really Lord Arden or something." "Would you mind so very much," said Aunt Edith gently, "if you weren't Lord Arden, Edred? Because..." And that was the end of the chapter. And we are going to read the next chapter. And I'm guessing that she's going to be a little bit sneaky and not give us the information for the next part of the story, because sometimes authors do that. Chapter 12, Films and Clouds. The films were quite dry by bedtime. This is the negative, what we would call negatives for the photographs that they had taken. The films were quite dry by bedtime when, after a delightful evening with no magic in it at all, but all the magic of undisturbed jolliness, Edred slipped away, unpinned them and hid them in Elfrida's corner drawer, which he rightly judged to be a cleaner resting place for them than his own was likely to be. So there the precious films lay between Elfrida's best lace collar and the handkerchief case, with 3 fat buttercups embroidered on it that Aunt Edith had given her at Christmas, and Edred went back to the parlour for one last game of Proverbs before bed. As he took up his cards, he thought how strange it was that he, who had been imprisoned in the Tower of London and talked with Sir Walter Raleigh, should be sitting there quietly playing Proverbs with his aunt and his sister, just like any other little boy. Proverbs. It's a game. Shall we find out what this game of Proverbs is meant to be? Let's try making sure that that's in the right box to type. Here we go. Here's a description of it from Board Game Geek. They're a great place to find out about games, old and new. The game consists of 96 small cards, each with a proverb written upon it. One player is selected to leave the room and be the guesser. All other players choose one of the proverbs from the box. Each of these players, in order, are given one word from the chosen proverb, and then the guesser is invited back in. The guesser then is asked to is to ask one player at a time a question. The player must answer him, but he must include the word from the proverb he was given in his answer. The guesser continues asking questions to players, to which they answer with inclusion of the given proverb word until the guesser can figure out and cite the proverb. So they keep asking questions. The person who's giving the clue keeps on using the specific word from the proverb in a sentence, and eventually all those pieces are added, because they have to figure out which word it is. All of those pieces are added together, and the guesser has to guess what the proverb is. The player who gave the final answer, which allowed the guesser to cite the correct proverb, is then the guesser, and play repeats. That sounds intriguing and quite a bit of a brain puzzle, something that you're going to have to work hard at to be able to figure it out along the way. I'm just bookmarking that because I wouldn't mind coming back to it sometime. Right, we'll carry on with the story. So they've been playing Proverbs. They have mentioned the game before, but we haven't actually looked it up. Oh my goodness, we've got Goriki here with Raiders. And here I was so busy reading off the other monitor that I didn't even see it. Hi everybody, what have you been up to? Good to see you. And thank you for following, Spookies. That's good. Spookly. So, what did you get up to today, Goriki? And I am so sorry that I missed out on being there. Hi, Arden, good to see you too. I am actually going to give everybody the Codex link. I haven't mentioned it before now because everybody who's been here is... I know all of you ones who've just arrived, if you've come with Goriki, then you will know what Codex is, because he would have told you, I hope. Otherwise, he's not doing his job properly. Anyway, so, yeah, I'm one of the Codex readers. There are links to all of us down below on my About page if you want to go across and have a look at all those channels and give everyone a follow and all that sort of stuff, which is always appreciated. I specifically read children's books. I don't do any gaming or anything else like that, although occasionally I do put up a jigsaw puzzle, which I think I'll put up now just in case anyone wants to use it. So if you type exclamation jigsaw or exclamation puzzle or exclamation PZ, it will give you the invite link to be able to play the jigsaw puzzle in case you want to. And thank you also, Blue Wave, for following. That's wonderful. So you've just wrapped up. I so wanted to be there for your anniversary stream, but I had to do all this horrible admin stuff, which started to get so frustrating because of the printer and the settings on the printer and I hate wasting cardboard when I'm printing on cardboard. And so I had this one card I had to print onto this piece of cardboard, and normally there's 8. And so I was trying to jiggle it around so I could reuse the other end of the piece of cardboard and all sorts of stuff like that, because I had to reprint something because I got it wrong the first time. And I was getting so mad. Anyway, so apart from me being all blah, 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 blah all the time, all I do here is I read old children's books. And we are 2 chapters from the end of The House of Arden by Edith Nesbit. It was published in 1907, and it's I love her books because the children in them always feel very real, very much based on her observations of what children really were like. But they're faced with these unusual fantasy type situations. So in this book, the children have a situation where supposedly somebody has inherited a title and a castle. There is obviously no money to be able to look after it. It's a bit rather run down and falling apart. And the children actually, through various devices, can travel back in time to different parts of the history of the castle and the family associated with the castle. So the purpose of this particular book is that they are trying to find the treasure to be able to restore the castle and the house that's part of it. And we don't quite know if it's going to happen or not by the end. Usually there's something a little bit else that happens, like there's a bit of personal development. They learn lessons. One of the other ones, it was about making wishes, one of the previous books, and the consequences of the wishes that you make. And you have to think about not just randomly saying something, but being quite specific about what you say because of the effects that it has in life. So she tells a message through the story, but the story itself is more important than just a message. They're not preachy books at all because they're decent, ordinary children. So I'm going to carry on with reading those. Reading the book. And leave all you wonderful people to listen. And just because there's so many of you, and I'm pretty sure that there's one or two that are actually able to do it, I'm going to leave the modding up to you. Sorry. I can usually manage when I've only got 4 people listening. But when there's a few more, yeah. So, right, here we go. So the children have just been having a game of Proverbs, which we found out is somebody picks a card somebody leaves the room and they're the guesser, and then the others who stay in the room have these cards with proverbs on. They pick one of them, and each of the people gets a word from the proverb, and then the guesser comes in and asks you questions, and you have to answer and use this word from the proverb. And then you keep going round and round and round and round and round, and once they've guessed the word that you had, you choose another word from the proverb, and the guesser has to eventually put these words together into what the actual proverb's meant to be. And then the last person who gave a clue that they guessed from then gets to be the guesser. So it's a game I've kind of heard of before, but not specifically. And it has been mentioned in this book before too. So I'm hoping my iPad is not going to go flat, that it's actually going to be charging faster than... Oh, yes, it is. We're up to 20% now instead of 10%. So that's wonderful. We'll carry on with the reading then. So one of their previous visits, they had gone back to, and I can't remember the time period. Jonathan might be able to tell me, but he doesn't have to. I'm just going to look up the book, and you will hear loud noises from my keyboard because my microphone's sitting on my desk where the keyboard is. Find the right link to have a look at it. Right. The gunpowder plot. The children had been put in prison in the Tower of London. Yes, gunpowder plot. Early 1600s, that's the one. It's got here 1605 was the specific... Sorry, spitting at the screen. 1605 was the specific year that this situation in the story was put in, and they used an historic incident as a way of escaping. The idea behind an historic incident, but it was after it had actually happened in the story that it happened in history. But it was because the boy had paid attention during history lessons to this intriguing bit. Anyway, right. Right. That's why there's a reference here in this next bit. As he took up his cards, this is for the game of Proverbs, putting them away, I think, he thought how strange it was that he, who had been imprisoned in the Tower of London and had talked with Sir Walter Raleigh, should be sitting there quietly playing Proverbs with his aunt and his sister, just like any other little boy. Aha, said Edred to himself, I am living a double life. That's what I'm doing. So the 2 children are Elfrida and Edred. Elfrida is 11 and Edred is 9, just in case. Quite old names, and I used to know what they... Yes, James Stewart was king, that's right. And I got them mixed up the other day, last time I was talking. This is why we have the historian here. So Jonathan... Actually, I should give you that. Sorry. Yeah, I should paste and copy, but I forgot to. So I'm just giving you these shout-outs just because I know these people. I hope I spelt that one right. We'll see. Anyway, so I'm just giving you those shout-outs because some of you don't know each other. So Jonathan is reading historic documents online, so letters from the Jacobean? No, Tudor period. Letters, court documents, actual historical documents, well, digitized versions of them. I don't think he's got the physical paper and parchment ones in his spare room that he's reading them from. It's a little bit hard to get access to that sort of thing in New Zealand, and you have to be a very special person to be allowed to, and wear special gloves so you don't damage them with the acids in your hand oil. So he reads these, and he reads them online the way I read, except with a lot less interruptions. And what he's doing is he's putting together this information to be able to do a game that is based on these historic events. And that's partly how I got to know Jonathan. Yeah, it would be really cool to be able to. I still am hoping someday to get down to Auckland Central Library and at least have a look at one of the medieval manuscripts down there that Sir George Grey deposited there, which became the centre of what then became Auckland Public Library System. That's the nearest I will get access to it. They may have to show me a modern copy of the original, but I'll be in the same building with it. But it is special request, and it's only from them bringing them. You have to go to a special area and make requests to do it. I'm also hoping to be allowed to do a digital copy of one of the New Zealand authored books, which is in public domain, but it has not been digitized and put online. I don't have the skills for digitizing or the patience, because I know it's basically you copy, type, and make sure you get it correctly. I don't have the patience for that, but it would be really cool because I do know that they happen to have a copy of several books by this other New Zealand author. Yeah, I will let you know if I am going to do that. So we'll just see what happens one day. And the other thing is, next time I go to Wellington, I will. So my nearest one is Auckland, but there's another one like that library down in Wellington that also holds historic documents, and I will see if that one has any books that I can go and take photos of the pages of. So Spookly, thank you for putting a lovely big long comment there. Great to. I'm just going to paste in your comment. The reason you've been timed out is because your comment is longer than 150 characters, and I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to put in more than that. Yeah, I know, Goriki. You said that last time I was on your channel. I'll just see if it'll let me put it through there. So, good evening, ma'am. I wanted to say I did a double take as I came in with the Goriki raid. I have a character I write for named Arden. So the title of this book may be exclaimed. Wait, what? Yeah, I totally get that. What I find for me, because I write long things too, is I start writing and I think, oh, hit enter, and then I keep on writing. And that way I actually am able to get things posted that otherwise will get timed out. So I'm going to carry on reading. So far I've had a brief explanation of what we're doing. Edred has said to himself, I'm living a double life. That's what I'm doing. So he's quite amused by this idea, because he's intrigued by things like court spies and this sort of idea. The youth and their Twitter. Yeah, I do a bit of tweeting too, and I started on Twitter back in the old days when it was 140 characters. So it's even less than what we've got here. And I always joke with my tech friends, because I've got a lot of friends in the tech industry in New Zealand, and they're all sort of like half my age or less. They're little kids, and I'm the housewife with the grey hair. But they make allowances for me and give me help whenever I need it. But they're great. Anyway, so Edred said to himself, I'm living a double life. That's what I'm doing. He had seen the expression in a book, and the idea charmed him. How pleased Edred looks with himself, said Aunt Edith. I'm sure he's got a whole proverb, or nearly, in his hand already. So this is to do with the game Proverbs she thinks that he's out about. Thank you. You'll be looking pleased presently, he said. You always win. Talking to Aunt Edith. So she's, oh, wonderful. The puzzle is finished, and I'll get it to tell me what the words are about it, because it usually does afterwards. and I'll read it out in case it's too small on your screen. Hever Castle near London, England. The reason I put that one up was because I couldn't actually find a jigsaw puzzle that had the Tower of London, except for when they had the exhibition which had all the poppies. It was like an art installation, that's what the word is, an art installation that had a river of poppies that ran across out of the windows and across the lawn. It was to do with people who had been incarcerated in the Tower of London, I think. Yeah, sorry, Aranel, I think you may have to shorten how many emoji you put together before it'll not time you out. It's horrible. I need to actually make some adjustments on that, but I'm not quite sure just how much of an adjustment I have to make. I'm just going to give you another puzzle in case you guys want to do another one, and then I'll carry on with reading. So irresponsible chatters. Yeah, chatting away. Now, do you want more or less puzzle pieces than what we had last time? I'll give you a moment. So before we had under 100 puzzle pieces. This one by default is 104. So more or less characters in the puzzle. And I need to make that decision before I do the share link. And I'm giving you a moment for the chat delay to let you come through. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I will actually get around to figuring out how many characters an emoji is equivalent to so I can decide what's appropriate. 100-ish looks good. Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll leave it on 104 then, and I will give you the game link. And then you can pull it up, or if anyone else comes along, you can they can pull it up too. So I'll just paste that into my commands before I carry on, and then you can pull it up when you're ready, anyone who wants to. Okay, so that link is available for those who want to do the puzzle. Just type in !puzzle or jigsaw and the licorice dealer. Yeah, Irresponsible Chatters and the Licorice Dealer would be a good book title, especially for a kid's book. And I'm going to have some licorice now. I should have done that before when I was just chatting. Anyway, so there you go, 100-ish. So it's 104. That should be okay for you now, I think. Hopefully Q's feeling okay. Q's not been too well recently, and so she's been enjoying listening, but even doing the puzzles has been a little bit much. Right, don't forget your water. And no, I don't have a hydrate command, so don't try and make me drink more. We'll carry on with the story, though. You'll be looking pleased presently, he said. Edred said, you always win. So he's talking to Aunt Edith about the game. And win she did, for Edred's thoughts were wandering off after the idea of how pleased Aunt Edith would look when he and Elfrida should come to her, take her by the hand and lead her to the hiding place of the treasure, and then say, behold the treasure of our house. Now we can rebuild the castle and mend the broken thatch on the cottages, because the castle lands are not huge, but they do actually have some cottages and stuff on the property, and previous owners have not really looked after them, so there's leaks in the roofs. The children have spent time getting to know the different occupants. Yeah, brew tea or coffee command thing would be a good. I need to start writing down a list of other commands. Tea, coffee. Oh yeah, there's your bonus tip, is make sure you've got a pencil and paper or pen and paper handy for when I'm reading, because often I will come across words that you might not know, but I do know, and I'll just charge on ahead and not necessarily explain them, because some words I'm just so familiar with. Other ones I'll over explain. Anyway, We'll carry on with reading. So I don't think she did say that he wasn't going to be Lord of Arden, but I'm not sure what she was going to say or if she has said it. It hasn't come up in this chapter yet. We'll carry on. Now we can, so he's imagining what it's going to be like if they're able to tell her about all these things that they can do. And mend the broken thatch on the cottages, and I can go to Eton and Oxford. Eton is a school that you go to, secondary equivalent, primary and secondary, and it gets you ready for going off to Oxford or Cambridge universities, top-level universities. But the school itself is considered a high-level school, and it still exists. And you can have a diamond tiara, that's Aunt Edith, he's thinking, and Elfrida can have a pony to ride, and so can I. So this is what he's thinking. Elfrida's thoughts were not unlike his, so Aunt Edith won the game of Proverbs, because they're both clearly distracted. You have been very good children, Mrs. Honeysett tells me. So that's the housekeeper who does the cooking and looks after the children when she's had to go up to London to sort things out. Aunt Edith was putting the cards back together. Not so extra good, said Edred. I mean, it's easy to be good when everything's so jolly, because they used to live with Aunt Edith in her house, her small house, overlooking the town by the coast, a little bit further along the coast on south of England, and she used to take in boarders to be able to get some income so that they could live off it, because she's looking after these children. I think they're her brother's children, I'm not sure, and I don't know if the children's parents are even... they can't be surviving anymore. They must be living with her as their guardian, because otherwise Edred wouldn't have become Lord of Arden, would he? Anyway, would have gone to his father. We have quarrelled once or twice, you know, said Elfrida virtuously, and that's the big thing that they have to learn in this book, is to not quarrel, because the magic that is part of the time travel doesn't work for 3 days after you've quarrelled. We have quarrelled once or twice, you know, said Elfrida virtuously. Yes, we have, said Edred firmly. They needn't, they felt, have confessed this, and that made them feel that they were good now, if never before. Well, don't quarrel any more. I shall be coming over for good quite soon, and then we'll have glorious times. Perhaps we'll find the treasure. You've heard about the treasure? So she doesn't know just what they've been up to. She doesn't know that they know all of this information. She knows about the castle, that it's had a family connection, but it's not been anywhere that she's lived. So she's been sorting out things to do with her house, possibly to sell it or to rent it out. And then she's going to come and live with the children in the house that's based in the castle. And that's why I've got this background. You can see there's these ruins here with garden and growth all over it. And then there's a building there that's built up against the wall of the castle. And the description at the beginning of the book of the castle is that you've got a ruined castle that comes around like this. And then in one part of it, at the other end, away from the old gatehouse, I think it was, is a house that's been built, possibly using materials from the ruined castle. People didn't tend to waste time and money on going and digging out more rock to build a house if there was rock handy in a building that was falling down and there's nothing wrong with the rock. So you just use the rock that's already there, and it's already cut to size and shape, so why not use it? So you've got the castle in this sort of a U shape, and then the house is built in this bit here, but part of it backs up to the actual tower itself, one of the towers itself. So we'll carry on with reading. Aunt Edith has no idea the extent of the stories that they've heard and the adventures that they've had with the time travelling, nor of how much they've been talking to the locals. Perhaps we'll find the treasure. You've heard about the treasure, said Aunt Edith. I should jolly well think we had, said Edred. He couldn't help saying it. And Elfrida added, and we've looked for it too, but we haven't found it. Did you ever look for it? No, said Aunt Edith, but I always wanted to. My grandfather used to look for it when he was a little boy. Was your grandfather Lord Arden? Edred asked. No, he was the grandson of the Lord Arden who fought for King James III, as they called him, the Pretender, you know, when he was quite a boy, and they let him off because of his being so young. And then he mortgaged all the Arden lands to keep the young pretender, Prince Charlie, you know, in the ballads. He got money to send to her, and of course Prince Charlie was going to pay it back when he was king, only he never was king, she sighed. And is that why the Tallow King got all the Arden land? Now the Tallow King is the businessman who has bought all the land surrounding it. Oh, look at that! Puzzle's nearly done. Yay, puzzle is done. That's fabulous. I'll give you another puzzle too. And I can't even remember why I particularly picked that one. Usually I do. A barn near Colorado Springs. There you go. I'll find you the next one and then we'll carry on with the rest of the story. Just because it's nice to have. I would like to have it set up so that I could actually have just a series of commands that can auto queue to the next one, but I don't have that facility. I don't have the brain for setting something like that up at the moment. I was thinking about it the other night as I went to sleep. Would you believe it? Interact. Here we go, and I'll get this going for you. 104, that's good. I tend to change the background colour so it's a little bit less jarring on the background that I've got around my camera. Copy the link and put it into chat. No, not into chat itself, but into the commands, and then you can add it whenever you want. There you go. The command is available for those who want it to play the next jigsaw puzzle. Right, we'll carry on. Is that why the Tallow King got all the Arden land? Yes, dear, that's why English people prefer Tallow Kings to Stuart Kings. And old Lord Arden mortgaged everything. That means he borrowed money, and if he didn't pay back the money by a certain time, he agreed to let them take the land instead. And he couldn't pay. You're most welcome, Arinel. I love being able to give you guys something to do. And thanks to Gorika for suggesting it too. And he couldn't pay, so they took the land, all except a bit in the village, which is where the cottages are, and Arden Knoll, that's the hill which the castle is part of. That was fixed so that he couldn't part from it. When we get the treasure, we'll buy back the land again, said Edred. The Tallow King's going to sell it. He's got so tallowy that Arden land isn't good enough for him. Old Beale told us that he was going to sell it. And I say, Auntie, we'll rebuild the castle too, won't we? And mend the holes in the thatch where the rain comes in people's cottages, I mean. Have you been much into people's cottages? Aunt Edith asked anxiously, with the strange fear of infection that seems to be a part of a grown-up's nature. Don't go there, you might get sick. Everyone in the village, I think, said Elfrida cheerfully. Old Beale told us we ought to, in case we found the treasure, so as to know what to do. That's fairly sensible, actually, for that context. The people are such dears. I believe they like us because we're their Ardens. Or is it because Edred's a lord? We must find the treasure, said Edred, looking as he always did when he was very much in earnest, so like his lost father that Aunt Edith could hardly bear it, so as to be able to look after our people properly. We must find the treasure so we can look after them. And to kick out the Tallow King, said Elfrida. So tallow, for those of you who don't know, is a form of rendered fat from animals, and it's used in lots of different ways. Tallow is a rendered form of beef or mutton fat. Okay, so it's where they melt the fat when the animals have been processed and turned into meat for people, and the skins into leather and all that sort of stuff. Instead of wasting it, the tallow is rendered, means heated until it separates from the bits that aren't the useful fat, and then it's actually used as an ingredient for soap. I don't know about now, but it used to be used in just about all soap, and it's also processed and used these days in other things as well. So yeah, it's used for all sorts. It's also used sometimes as part of production of biodiesel. Did you know that? It's used partly in, or has been used in the past in aviation fuel, American aviation fuel, been processed to be part of it. It has been used for printmaking as an ingredient. In all these situations, it's an ingredient, isn't it? And for candles, tallow candles, we hear about them being too poor to have wax candles, and so they had beeswax candles, so they had tallow candles, which means that you get the smell from the beef, and you also get the it's not as clean burning as beeswax. It's not as quite as pleasant. That sort of thing. All sorts of uses. If you look it up on Wikipedia, look up tallow, Tallow, you'll actually see what it's about. So this guy has made his money off processing tallow and using it for making it available as an ingredient for things. The Tallow King. Right. There you go. How would you like to be known for that, famous for that? We'll carry on. And to kick out the Tallow King, said Elfrida. But you won't be discontented if you don't find it, said Aunt Edith. It's only a sort of game, really. No one I ever knew ever found a treasure. And think what we've found already. Arden Castle instead of Seaview Terrace. That's the house that they had been in. I just realised that some of you have no idea why these children have these odd names. So Edred is an Anglo-Saxon name. It's actually a Latinized version of it. And Edred was also the name of one of the 10th century kings of England, apparently. And it comes from the meaning for rich counsel. Rich or blessed counsel. There you go. So a wise person who would advise wisely. And Elfrida, finding the right place on the page. No, I don't like the baby name pages, so I use the behind the name website. It gives you a lot more background on names where they have the information. Middle English form of an Old English name, which means elf strength. There you go. And also part of the context of the children's names is because the different time periods they've visited, there have been children who look like them, ancestors, who have the same names, and so it's a way of getting the continuity in the story. So there you go. And think what we've found already. Arden Castle instead of Seaview Terrace, and the lodges. Good night, chicks, she says to the two children. She was gone before they were up in the morning, and the morning's first business was the printing of the photographs. Remember the films that they were developing? They printed them in the kitchen because Mrs. Honeysett was turning out the parlour to clean it, I suppose. And besides, the kitchen window was wide and sunny, and the old table, scoured again and again till a grain of the wood stood up in ridges, was a nice, big, clear place to stand the toning dishes on. So these are the trays of different chemicals that you use for processing photographic paper to make photographic prints. And yes, a lot of the pictures that we've got in the jigsaws, these at the moment are ones that are garden based because of probably one of our previous stories. We'll see. Anyway, carrying on. The grain of the wood because it's been scrubbed. So a big clear place on the on the kitchen table to stand the toning dishes on. They printed on matte paper because it seemed somehow less common and more like a picture than the shiny kind. So more like a painting type picture. The printing took the whole morning, and they had only done one frame. And when they had done, there were 18 brown prints of the castle from all sorts of points of the compass, north and south, but I explained all this to you before. When the prints were dried, which as you know is best done by sticking them up on the windows, it became necessary to find a place to put them in. One could not gloat over them forever, though for quite a long time it seemed better to look at them again and again and to say, that's how it ought to be, that's the way we'll have it, than to do anything else. Wonderful. Gardens of the Fountain in Nîmes, France. That's how I've always said it anyway. Sorry if it's wrong. I'll give you the next puzzle and then I'll carry on reading. I'm getting a little bit faster at this. Hopefully we'll manage to keep that going. Just waiting. Copy link and paste it into the command for those who want it. It's not there yet, but it will be shortly. There you go. Ready to go. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Aranel. I didn't see that. We can do more pieces next time because I can't. I don't think I can. I might be able to. Oh, I can. I can change it. Choose. It's not letting me. It's not letting me change it. I'm sorry. I'll do it on the next one. See if that works for you. I have actually pasted the link in for you. Otherwise, I'll redo it. Yeah, I'll give it a go with more pieces next time. Sorry about that. Yeah, I know some of you are so good at fast puzzles and so much faster. Right, we'll carry on with what we were up to here. Elfrida and Edred took the prince into the parlour, which was now as neat as a new pin, because Mrs. Honeysett has been in there and turned the room out and got all the dust out and the cobwebs, and it's fresh smelling and all that sort of stuff. Into the parlour, which was now as neat as a new pin and smelt almost too much of beeswax and turpentine, furniture polish. Spread them on the polished oval dining table and gloated over them. You can see every little bit exactly right, said Elfrida. They're a little tiny bit muzzy. I expect our distance wasn't right or something, but that only makes them look more like real pictures. And us having printed them on paper, that's too big, makes it more picture-y too. So it's got a little border of white around the edge of it, so it's more like an actual picture in a picture frame type of look. And anyone who knew about how buildings are built would know how to set it up. It would be like putting the bricks back into the box from the pattern inside the lid. Yeah, the building bricks. They used to do sets of building bricks that were like blocks of wood, and you had to interlace them in the right way to fit them all into the box. A little bit like, kind of like the basis of doing Tetris, where when you get a complete row, that row disappears. That's what they were trying to do, is to fit everything together to fill up completely and perfectly. And so they're saying that if you follow the instructions on the lid of the box, it's probably a bit like following photographs to build it back to what it used to look like. Here Mrs. Honeysett called from the kitchen, "You done with all this litter?" And both children shouted, "Yes," and went on looking at the pictures. It was well that the shout was from both. If only one had done it, there might have been what Mrs. Honeysett called words about the matter later. Words. For the next moment both said, "The films," and rushed to the kitchen just in time to see the kitchen fire enlivened by that peculiar crackling flare which fire and films alone can produce. They had left the films there. They no longer have the films. Those photographs that they have printed are all they have, because the films have gone into the fire, and they would have had words between each other as to who was to blame for them having been left behind if one of them had not answered. Mrs. Honeysett had thrown the films on the fire with the other litter, and it was no one's fault but the children's, as Mrs. Honeysett pointed out. "I ask you if you done with it all, and you says yes, only yourselves to thank," she repeated again and again amid their lamentations, and they had to own that she was right. "We must take extra special care of the prince, that's all," said Edred, and the History of the Ardens was chosen as a hiding place, both safe and appropriate. The History of the Ardens is the book that they have been looking at in the past from the library of this the house. It doesn't matter so much about the films, said Elfrida, because we could never have shown them to anyone. If we find the treasure, we'll arrange for Auntie to find these prints, leave the history about, or something, and she'll think they're photographs of painted pictures, so that'll be all right. As they arranged the prints between the leaves of the history, Elfrida's eye was caught by the words moat and water supply, and she read on and turned the page. Don't stop to read, said Edred, but she waved him away. I say, listen, she said, turning back, and she read, in ancient times, Arden Castle was surrounded by a moat. The original architects of the venerable pile, that's the way they used to describe a place like that, it was not a pile of stones, but the actual collection of buildings was referred to as a pile. I don't know why. You can look that word up yourself. With that ingenuity whose fruits the thinking world so much admires in the lasting monuments of their labours, diverted from its subterranean course, a stream which rose through the chalk in the hills of the vicinity, and is said to debouch into the sea about 50 yards below high water mark. The engineering works necessary for this triumph of mind over matter endured until 1647, when the castle was besieged by the troops of that monster in human form, Oliver Cromwell. To facilitate his attack on the castle, the officer in command gave orders that the stream should be diverted once more into its original channel. This order was accordingly executed by his myrmidons. You can look that one up. I'll spell it for you. Myrmidons. So if you look that up and type it into the chat, I'll read it out. Myrmidons. And the moat was left dry, this assisting materially the treacherous designs of the detestable regicides. It is rumoured that the stream, despite the lapse of centuries, still maintains its subterranean course, but the present author, on visiting during the autumn of 1821 the residence of the present Earl of Arden, and by his permission most courteously granted, exploring the site thoroughly, was unable to find any trace of its existence. The rural denizens of the district denied any knowledge of such a stream, but they are sunk in ignorance and superstition, and have no admiration for the works of philosophy, or the awe-inspiring beauties of nature. So he's a bit of a snob, the writer, wasn't he? What a dull chap he is, said Edred. But I say, when was it printed? 1822? So he had visited the year before it was printed. I believe I know why the rural what's-his-names wouldn't let on about the stream. Don't you see, it's the stream that runs through the smuggler's cave. Yes. Aha. Sorry, I'm just moving a noisy piece of plastic so it's out of the way and not going to keep being noisy. So I can have this. The stream that runs through the smuggler's cave, and they were smuggling then for all they were worth. That's clever of you, said Elfrida. Well, I bet we find traces of its existence when we've found the treasure. Come on, let's try the chests again. We'll put on the first things we find and chance it this time. There's nothing to stop us. We haven't quarrelled or anything. Oh, sorry, itchy nose. They had not quarrelled, but there was something to stop them all the same, and that something was the fact that they could not find the door. It simply was not there. So obviously it's not the right timing for them to actually go and visit another time period, because that's usually, they usually can't find it because they've been bickering. But sometimes I think it's just because it's not the right timing for them to go somewhere else. Anyway. The door simply was not there, and we haven't quarrelled or anything, said Elfrida, despairing when they had searched the east house again and again. So there's the east house, which is the old semi-ruined part of the house, which has been left empty, neglected. It's got cobwebs everywhere and all that sort of stuff, and that's part of what the children want to fix. And the reason why is in one of the previous videos, so you can go back and have a listen. And I can't remember which one, I'm sorry. We haven't quarrelled or anything, said Elfrida, despairing when they had searched the east house again and again and found no door that would consent to lead them to the wonderful attic where the chests stood in their 2 wonderful rows under the roof. There's a row of chests, storage trunks type chests down each side, and the children, that's where the dress-ups, that effectively dress-ups have been, that the children have been actually trying out along the way. Puzzle, yeah. I shall get this one ready for you. Oh, no, that's the one I've got. Not that one. Give you another one. And this time we'll do more puzzle pieces. Any thoughts as to how many puzzle pieces you want this time? Let me know. Yeah, hooray, we got it. So, thoughts on how many more pieces? You did say you wanted more pieces, but I'm not sure. It's a great book. I had not read this particular one of hers before. Most people are familiar with other books of hers, mainly The Railway Children, which is a standalone book. It doesn't have any sequels or anything like that. So the last puzzle you guys did was 104 pieces, I think. So how many pieces do you want for this one? I can give you... Oh, no, come back. Oh, good. It did. That was this one is available on 108. Should we make it 192? Or does that sound a little bit too challenging? I'm going to go ahead anyway. Give you the link. And then it can't be changed until we change it to another picture. Copy the link. And go over here. Find the right page. No, not that one. And put the link in here for you. And that's ready to go. You can hit jigsaw puzzle whenever you're ready. Oops. There. So you can pull up the link for yourselves. Now, so here we go. They couldn't find the door where the chests were in the attic with 2 rows of chests, one down each side of under the roof. Each chest has a different style of clothing in it, and the chests of clothes, each style seems to take them to a different time period. She sat down on the top step of the attic stairs, quite regardless of the dust that lay there quite thickly. So she's sitting in the dust. Mrs. Honeysett's not going to be that pleased, is she? Yeah. It's all up. I can see that, said Edred. We've muffed it somehow. I wonder whether we oughtn't to have taken those photographs. Do you think, perhaps, could we have dreamed it at all? No, said Edred. There are the prints. At least I suppose they're there. We'll go down and see. Miserably doubting, they went down and saw that the photographs were where they had put them, in between the pages of the history of Arden. I don't see what we can do. Do you? Said Edred forlornly. It was a miserable ending to the happenings that had succeeded each other in such a lively procession ever since they had been at Arden. It seemed as though a door had been shut in their faces, and not any more, written in very plain letters across the chapter of their adventures. Oh, how disappointing. I wish we could find the witch again, said Elfrida, but she said she couldn't come into these times more than once. Oh, now, the witch was someone that they have met in a couple of places. One was in their own time. She was a lady who was in one of the cottages and had given them some information. Yes. Let's just see if I've got the... I think the jigsaw link that Arden put up didn't work just because it was so quickly after iBlue had put up the alternate command for it. It should still work though if you do need it again. Otherwise, just click on the one that's in the chat if you haven't already. She said she couldn't come into these times more than once. I wonder why, said Edred, kicking his boots miserably against the leg of the table on which he sat. That Dicky chap must have been here pretty often to have an address at New Cross. So Dicky, Richard, was somebody that they had met that knew about modern times. They thought they were meeting a cousin who was from the old times. So how was he travelling into their time? I say, suppose we wrote to him. It would be something to do. So they wrote. At least Elfrida did, and they both signed it. This was the letter. Dear Cousin Richard, you remember meeting us at the gunpowder plot. If you're at these modern times again, we should like to know you and to know how you get into the future. That's their times. Perhaps you can get into the past the same. Perhaps we could get into the past the same way, because the way we used to get, we can't anymore. Perhaps you could come here next time instead of New Cross. Your affectionate friends at a distance, Miss Elfrida Arden, Lord Edred Arden. P.S. I don't know how lords sign letters because I've not been too long, but you'll know who it is. P.S.S., which is actually meant to be P.P.S. Remember old Parrot Nose. That was this horrible teacher that Richard had that Edred managed to play a trick on at the end. They walked down to the post with this, and as they went they remembered how they had gone to the George with old Lady Arden's letter in Boney's time, and Edred remarked listlessly, Boney being Napoleon Bonaparte, Edred remarked listlessly that it would be rather fun to find the smuggler's cave, so when they had bought a stamp and licked it and put it on the letter, they went up on the cliff and looked among the furze bushes for the entrance to the smuggler's cave. Remember what furze is? It's also known as gorse or whins, and it's all prickly and has bright yellow flowers over it. But they went looking among the furze bushes for the entrance to the smuggler's cave, but they did not find it. Are we surprised? Not really. Nothing makes you hotter than looking for things that you can't find, and there is no hotter place to look for things than a furze forest on the downs on a sunny summer afternoon. The children were glad to sit down on a clean, smooth, grassy space and look out at the faint blue line of the sea. They had not really enjoyed looking for the smuggler's cave. They're looking in amongst the gorse bushes, so it's very prickly, and when you're hot and sweaty and you've been poked by gorse, it's very uncomfortable. I'm speaking from experience, not looking for smuggler's caves, but gorse and summertime and things like that. They had not really enjoyed looking for the smuggler's cave. Vain regrets were busy in each breast. Edred gave voice to them when he said, "Oh, if only we had put those gold clothes on when we had the chance." And Elfrida echoed the useless, heartfelt wail with, "Oh, if only we had." And then they sat in silence and looked at the sea for quite a long time. Now, if you sit perfectly still for a long time and look at the sea or the sky or the running water of a river, something happens to you, a sort of magic. Not the violent magic that makes the kind of adventures that I've been telling you about, but a kind of gentle but very strong inside magic that makes things clear and shows you what things are important and what are not. You try it next time you're in a very bad temper, or when you think someone has been very unjust to you, or when you are very disappointed and hurt about anything. Just sit and look at the sky, or the sea, or the river, or the trees moving in the wind. That's what she's talking about. The magic worked in Edred and Elfrida till Edred said, "After all, we've got the castle." And Elfrida said, "And we've had some ripping times." And then they looked at the sea in more silence, during which Hope came and whispered to Elfrida, who instantly said, "The Mouldiwarp! Perhaps it's not all over. It told us to find the door, and we did find the door. Perhaps it would tell us something new if we called it now, and if it came." So she's actually understanding the principles behind it as well. "And if it came," said Edred, the same as she was saying it, Don't talk, make poetry, said Elfrida, but that was one of the things that Edred could never do. Trying to make poetry was to him like trying to remember a name you have never heard, or to multiply a number you've forgotten by another number you don't recollect. But Elfrida, that youthful poet, frowned and bit her lips and twisted her hands and reached out within her mind to words that she just couldn't quite think of till the words grew tame and flew within reach, and she caught them and caged them behind the bars of rhyme. This was her poem. Dear Mouldiwarp, do come if you can and tell us if there is any plan that you can tell us of for us two to get into the past like we used to do. Dear Mouldiwarp, we don't want to worry you, but we are in a frightful hurry. That's probably the biggest one she's done so far, and it kind of works better too. So you be always, said the white Mouldiwarp, suddenly appearing between them on the yellowy dry grass, always in a frightful hurry. Well, use the season for silliness. What's to do now? I be terrible tired of all this. I wish I'd only got to give ye the treasure and go my ways. You don't give a poor Mouldiwarp a minute's rest. You do terrify me same's flies, you do. The Mouldiwarp is a mole, a white mole, and he's magical, and he has powers over white things, such as snow and feathers and white daisies. Is there any other way, said Elfrida, to get back into the past? We can't find the door now. Course you can't, said the mole. That's a chance gone, and gone forever. He that will not, when he may, he shall not, when he would a. So because they chose not to use those clothes, they can't find the door now. Oh dear. Well, tell me where you want to go, and I'll make you a backways working white clock. Anywhere you like, said Edred incautiously. Oh dear, we've had troubles with those sort of wishes in the other books, haven't we? Said the mole, rubbing its nose with vexation. There's another chance gone, and gone forever. You be terrible spending with your chances, you be. Now, answer sharp as a weasel's nose. Be there any one in the past you'd like to see? If you don't know, then you don't go, he said. And that's poetry as good as yours any day of the week, he also said to them. Cousin Richard, said Elfrida and Edred together. This was the only name they could think of. Bide ye still, my dears, said the Mouldiwarp, and I'll make you a white road right to where he is. So they sat still, all but their tongues. Is he in the past, said Elfrida, because if he is, it wasn't much good our writing to him. You hold your little tongues, said the Mouldiwarp, and keep your little mouths shut, and your little eyes open, and wish well to the white magic. There never was a magic yet, the mole went on, that was the worse for being well wished. May I say something, said Elfrida, without it stopping the magic? Put your white handkerchief over your face and talk through it, and then you may. So it's kind of like a mask or a filter. By a most fortunate and unusual chance, Elfrida's handkerchief was white. It was, in fact, still folded in the 16 blameless squares into which the laundress had ironed it. She threw it over her face as she lay back on the turf and spoke through it. I'd like to see the nurse witch again, she said. Instead of Cousin Richard? No, as well. That's right, said the magic mole. You shouldn't change your wishes, but there's no rule against enlarging them. On the contrary. Now look. Elfrida whisked away the handkerchief and looked. Have you ever noticed the way the bath water runs away when you pull up the bath tap? Have you ever seen bottles filled through a funnel? Hi, Aunt. Great to have you here. The white Mouldiwarp reached up its hands and its front feet, I ought perhaps to say, towards the deep blue sky, where white clouds herded together like giant sheep. And it spoke, at least it did not speak, but it sang, yet I don't know what I don't know that you would call it singing either. It was more like the first notes that a violin yields to the bow, wielded by the hand of a master musician, and the white clouds stooped to answer it. Round and round in the blue sky they circled, drawing together and swirling down as the bathwater draws and swirls when you pull up the knob labelled waste. These are fixed plugs where you have a lever that's attached to it. And I have, there's a relative's house in Canada that I remember visiting that had something similar. In New Zealand, we don't have fixed plugs with a stick that you poke or a knob that you pull. We have a plug that is loose and it has a wire loop on the top. And sometimes you can have a chain attached to it so you don't lose it. But you have a rubbery plug, not ones like this where they're fixed in place and you make it go up and down by pushing something. I'll get back to this. So the bathwater draws and swirls when you pull up the knob labelled waste, round and round till they showed like a vast white funnel, this is the clouds are, whose neck hung a great ring above the group on the dry grass of the downs. It stooped and stooped. It's forming a funnel cloud. The ring fitted down over them. They were in a white tower, narrow at its base where the base touched the grass, but widening to the blue sky overhead. "Take hands," cried the Mouldiwarp. "Always hold hands when there's magic about." "Both hands." The children clasped hands. "Both hands," said the Mouldiwarp, and each child reached out a hand that was caught and held. Round and round, incredibly swifter and swifter, went the cloud funnel, and the voice of the mole at their feet, because he's only a little mole, sounded faint and far away. "Up," it cried, "up! Shall the very clouds dance for your delight, and you alone refrain and tread not a measure?" The children leapt up, because they'd been sitting on the grass, and through the cloud came something that was certainly music, though it was so vague and far away that the sharpest music master you ever had could not have made out the tune. But the rhythm of it was there, an insistent beat, 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 and a beat that made your feet long to keep time to it, and through the rhythm presently the tune pierced, as the sound of the pipes pierces the sound of the drums when you see the church brigade boys go by when you are on your holiday by the sea near their white-tented happy camps. Obviously a thing at the time. I would have said when the Walk with Welsford pipe band goes past. We have a bagpipe band, because there's people in the area who have Scottish backgrounds, a bagpipe and drum band that goes past, and you hear the beating of the drums, but then you hear the skirl of the pipes, the sound of the pipes. It's wonderful when you're outdoors. It works really, really well. You can see how it would have been popular in that part of Scotland where they were played. At that time the children's feet could not resist. They danced steps that they had not known they knew, and they knew for the first time the delight of real dancing. None of your waltzes or even minuets, but the dancing that means youth and gaiety and being out for a holiday and determined to enjoy everything to the last breath. One of the actual more formal styles of dancing that has that feel is what they call Scottish country dancing. If you ever get the chance to go to a dance evening that has Scottish country dancing, just go with an open mind and expect to be learning and fumbling and all that sort of stuff. They call the dancers so you learn what the moves are that you've got to make. A lot of fun, and you can't help but tapping your feet, and you can't help moving and joining in. So it's kind of like that, but less formal in this situation in the story. As they danced, the white cloud funnel came down and closed about them so that they danced, as it were, in a wrapping of white cotton wool, too soft for them even to feel it, and there was a sweet scent in the air. They did not know in that cloudy, soft whiteness what flower bore the scent, but they knew that it smelt of the spring, and of fields and hedges far away from the ugliness of towns. The cloud thinned as the scent thickened, and green lights showed through it. The green lights grew, the cloud funnel lifted, and Edred and Elfrida, still dancing, found themselves but two in a ring of some 30 children, dancing on a carpet of green turf between walls of green branches, and every child wore a wreath of white May blossoms on its head, and that was the magic scene that had come to them through the white cloud of the white Mouldiwarp's magic. "What is it? Why are we dancing?" Edred incautiously asked of the little girl, whose hand, and not Elfrida's, he found that his left hand was holding. The child laughed, just laughed. She did not answer. It was Elfrida who had his right hand, and her own right hand was clasped in that of a boy dressed in green. "Oh," she said with a note of glad recognition, "it's you! I'm so glad! What is it? Why are we dancing?" "It's May Day," said Cousin Richard, "and the king is coming to look on the revels." So you can look up May Day as well. Not May Day for urgency, but the day in May to celebrate spring. I'm just checking to see if you guys actually did find a word for me before. Can't tell. I'm not scrolling back that far. So I'm just going back. "It's May Day," said Cousin Richard, "and the king is coming to look on at the revels." "What king?" she asked. "Who but King Harry," he said, "King Harry and his new queen, that but of late was the Lady Anna Boleyn." Anne Boleyn? King Harry, that's Henry. Which Henry? I can tell you this. Henry the Eighth. "I say, Dick," said Edred across his sister, "I am jolly glad to see you again. Not now," said Dick earnestly. "Not a word now, it's not safe. And besides, here comes the king." So it seems like Dick has been doing this time travelling for a lot longer, and he knows what the rules are about how you do it to be safe, and so you don't spoil it and don't lose your opportunities to travel again. Well, they found him. We haven't seen the witch yet, but that was the end of that chapter. So the next chapter is chapter 13, May Blossom and Pearls, and it's 32 pages long, which is longer than we had today. And then after that, there is one more chapter, and I'm not even going to tell you what that one's called. So that's the end of today's reading. I'm going to let you finish the puzzle. That's fine. It's now 20 to 5 here in New Zealand. I'm going to have some of my iced coffee because I've been reading. And some of my licorice. Right. So what else have we got going on that I have to think about? I will actually no, that was me. Just checking to see if there's anything I'm meant to have been dealing with on the other side. Nope, nothing else there. Right. I'm just checking to see if there's anything I need to be telling you guys. So I'm going to give you the link to my Discord server. It's fairly quiet. In fact, it's very quiet unless I forget to turn chat on, which I did today. I really need to get that checklist done for myself so I can hang it above my monitor so I can remember to go through all the things. Did I do this? Did I do that before I started or as I started? I know why I didn't this time. It's because I was trying to get the clock to work with the correct time for the countdown timer to when I started. And I thought I'd done it and it didn't work. It went back to the old time repeatedly. And I got so distracted by that I forgot to turn the chat on, because I usually turn on the chat while it's still on the countdown before we actually get to the actual starting time for the story. So I will get the list done sometime, a checklist of things that I need to do before I start reading. That's the idea. And you'll be pleased to know, well, I am, my iPad is now up to 50% power, so it's charging quite well on that cable. So that's good. So my Discord server, as I said, is very, very quiet. You're most welcome to join. Oh, okay. So thank you, Mirror Sky. Thank you for joining our Discord server. I'm pretty sure I don't have to authorize you to be involved. If you do join, please, you don't have to, but if you would like to, oh, wonderful, that picture came out really well. I should find out who, what, I didn't actually see what that picture was. Can't remember. It probably says on my link for it. Stone garden shed. Okay, whatever. I'll just turn that off for now because it's distracting me. Right, so my Discord server is very, very quiet usually, except for occasionally when I forget to turn on chat, and then people try and remind me if I happen to have that tab open on my browser that I haven't yet turned on chat. You guys did really well and worked out a way around it, so that was great. Thank you very much. Mirror Sky, what is really cool to do is to actually just say hi in the intros channel and say a little bit about, as much as you're happy to, who you are or what your connection is with stories or something like that. You don't have to say a lot. If you're happy to say what country you're in, that's great, because I like people to actually realize that we are a bigger community than just the country that we ourselves live in. So I'm in New Zealand, so is Jonathan. Goriki is in Japan, but Goriki is not originally from Japan as far as I know. It's great to have everybody here. And yes, I have not been looking at my tab that tells me exactly who is here, which I probably should have done, and I'm really sorry about that. Don't forget to check out the other codex readers in the links below the active video window at the moment, or on my about page there's a codex panel. There's links to all of our current codex readers. We all read public domain books. Most of the others also do games and other bits and pieces as well. At the moment, Goriki is doing a big binge on reading because he's in his school holiday time, so he's not having to look after his voice for his work. I'm not meaning he's reading right at the moment, but the time of year is such that he can be reading rather than gaming. He does other stuff too, like internet security or streaming security and that sort of stuff. So there's a whole heap of people. It's been great having you all here, and thank you for the new follows. That's much appreciated too. I look forward to possibly seeing you again next time, or maybe seeing you on your channel when you're streaming. I do try to get around a little bit and sort of say hi to people and be involved with what they're doing. It doesn't always work, sorry. But from me here in New Zealand, Jev here in New Zealand, and Jonathan's in New Zealand too, where it's nearly 5 o'clock and the end of our normal work day. To you, wherever you are in the world, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or night or whatever else it is that you've got going on. And I have appreciated you being here and being so actively involved with the puzzles and everything else and finding out about things. Look forward to seeing you another time, hopefully next time, but that's okay if you can't. Happy reading. There you go. That's all there's left to say. See you again sometime. Much love to all. Bye. Happy reading.